Greetings, dear reader. Welcome to the world of Rivervale, a place where magic pulses through the rivers and ancient trees whisper secrets older than time itself. In this land of wonder and mystery, there is one legend that has captivated the hearts of all who live here, the story of the Enchanted Bridge. Many have tried to find it, drawn by the promise of power and wisdom, but few have succeeded. It is said that the bridge appears only once every 100 years, shrouded in mist and mystery, leading those who are worthy to realms unknown. What will happen when a young adventurer named Ilara discovers a hidden map, leading her to the bridge's fabled location? Will she be ready to face the trials set before her, or will she fall short like so many before her? As you turn the pages, follow Ilara on her journey. Brace yourself for challenges, magic, and revelations, for the road ahead is fraught with tests of heart, mind, and courage. Chapter 1: The River's Secret. The sun was barely rising over the sleepy village of Rivervale, casting a soft golden glow across the rolling hills and the winding river that gave the village its name. The air was crisp with the scent of pine and fresh earth, and the sound of chirping birds filled the morning silence. It was a peaceful place, tucked away at the edge of the world, where the only disruptions came from the laughter of children and the murmurs of old storytellers by the hearth. At the heart of the village stood an ancient oak tree, its trunk gnarled with age, its branches stretching like arms to embrace the sky. Beneath it sat Ilara, her legs crossed, a weathered book open in her lap. She had been there for hours, as she often did, lost in the world of stories that filled her grandmother's book, a book that had been passed down through generations, its pages filled with myths of magic, strange creatures, and long-forgotten lands. Ilara was a dreamer. While the other children of Rivervale played by the river or helped their families in the fields, she was always off on her own, seeking knowledge and adventure in the books that had once belonged to her parents. Her grandmother, a wise woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, had told her that she was different. "Your heart beats for something greater, Ilara," she would say with a knowing smile. "Your journey will be unlike any other." But today, something felt different. Ilara ran her fingers over the faded pages of her grandmother's book and stopped at a particular illustration. It was a drawing of an old stone bridge, half hidden by mist and surrounded by strange glowing symbols. Beneath it, in elegant script, were the words, "The Enchanted Bridge appears once every 100 years." Ilara had heard the story countless times, how the bridge was a passage to unimaginable power, or perhaps a wish granted to the one who could cross it. But like all legends, it was wrapped in mystery and doubt. Some said it was only a myth, others claimed it was a test, one that only the purest of hearts could pass. She glanced around, noticing the quiet of the village as everyone went about their morning routines. Her grandmother had always been careful to keep the story of the Enchanted Bridge alive, but not many took it seriously anymore. It was just another fairy tale to keep children entertained. But for Ilara, the legend had always felt more than just a story. It called to her in ways she couldn't explain. As the breeze stirred the pages of the book, Ilara's eyes caught sight of something new, something that hadn't been there before. Tucked in between the pages, hidden under an old map of Rivervale, was a scrap of parchment. It was small and worn, but unmistakable. She unfolded it carefully, her heart beating faster with each movement. The map was crudely drawn, but there was no mistaking it. It depicted the river that ran beside the village, winding its way through the forest, crossing valleys and hills, and leading to a place marked with the same glowing symbols from the book. Ilara's pulse quickened. This was no ordinary map. It was the key to the legend her grandmother had spoken of so many times. She turned the map over, searching for any other clues. There, in the corner, was a single line of text, written in her grandmother's delicate handwriting. "Find the bridge, and you will find your destiny." Ilara stood up abruptly, the map still clutched in her hand. Her mind raced with questions. Why had this been hidden in the book? Was it a sign? Was it her time to uncover the truth of the enchanted bridge? The legend had always seemed like a distant dream, something for heroes of old. But now, the bridge was real. It was waiting. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind. "Your journey will be unlike any other." The words gave her both courage and trepidation. Taking a deep breath, Ilara folded the map carefully and tucked it into her tunic. She glanced at the river in the distance, its waters shimmering like liquid silver under the morning sun. Her adventure had just begun, and she had no idea what lay ahead, but one thing was certain: she was ready. Without another thought, Ilara set off toward the river, determined to follow the map's trail. The village of Rivervale, with its simple life and ancient traditions, would soon fade from her mind as she stepped into a world of magic, danger, and wonder. And perhaps, if she was truly worthy, the enchanted bridge would finally reveal itself. Chapter 2: The Call of the Forest. The morning air in Rivervale was still crisp as Ilara walked along the narrow path that wound its way toward the forest. The village seemed quieter today, as if the earth itself was holding its breath, awaiting the moment when the enchanted bridge would reveal its secret. Ilara's heart pounded in her chest, but there was no turning back now. She had uncovered the map, and its message was clear. The time had come. Her footsteps were soft on the dirt path, and the faint sound of the river flowing nearby offered a strange sense of calm. Yet, as she ventured farther from the village and deeper into the woods, the air grew thick with an unfamiliar tension. The trees loomed overhead, their dark branches twisting like fingers reaching toward the sky. The sunlight filtered through the canopy, casting eerie patterns on the ground. Ilara glanced at the map again, the worn edges of the parchment trembling slightly in her hand. The map was old, almost ancient, and while its lines were clear, there was something unsettling about its simplicity. The river, the forest, and a single glowing spot marked the final destination. It was close, closer than she had realized, but the closer she got to the forest, the more uncertain she became. What would she find in the depths of the woods? And why had her grandmother kept this secret for so long? As Ilara walked deeper into the forest, a strange stillness surrounded her. The birds had stopped singing, and even the rustling of the wind seemed to have quieted. The trees appeared taller now, their trunks thick with age, and the air was charged with a palpable sense of magic. Her grandmother had always warned her that the forest could be both beautiful and dangerous. But Ilara had never believed her words until now. She reached a small clearing, and as her eyes scanned the landscape, she noticed something strange: a large stone archway half covered in vines and moss. It was not on the map, and yet it seemed impossibly familiar. The stones, weathered by time, glowed faintly in the dim light. Ilara hesitated for a moment before stepping closer. Something deep inside her stirred, a feeling she couldn't explain, like the archway was calling to her. As she touched one of the stones, the ground beneath her feet trembled, and the air seemed to hum with energy. A soft, melodic voice echoed through the clearing, making Ilara's heart race. "Not all who seek the bridge are worthy, child." Ilara's breath caught in her throat, and she spun around, her hand instinctively reaching for the dagger at her side. But the clearing was empty, save for the archway and the trees. The voice had come from nowhere and everywhere all at once, resonating deep in her chest. "Who's there?" she called, her voice trembling slightly. No answer came, but the sense of being watched lingered, and the pressure in the air intensified. She could feel it now. Something ancient, something powerful, was close. Just as Ilara began to wonder if the voice had been a figment of her imagination, the air shifted again. The stone archway in front of her began to glow brighter, its symbols pulsing with an otherworldly light. Ilara took a cautious step forward, her heart hammering in her chest. The voice returned, this time softer, but no less mysterious. "You seek the bridge, but what will you sacrifice to cross it?" Ilara's fingers brushed against the stones, and a wave of cold swept over her. Though the day had been warm, she felt an undeniable pull, a compulsion to move forward, yet part of her hesitated. The voice's words echoed in her mind. "What will you sacrifice?" I don't know," she whispered, her voice almost lost in the heavy silence. "I just need to find it. The bridge. I have to." The archway pulsed again, and the ground rumbled beneath her feet. Ilara stepped back, her heart racing. She could feel a presence, a force, something watching from within the forest. Suddenly, a rustling sound broke the silence, and Ilara spun toward the sound, hand gripping the dagger hilt tightly. A figure stepped into the clearing, tall, cloaked in a dark hooded robe, and carrying a staff adorned with strange symbols. The figure's face was hidden, but the air around them felt ancient, as though this person had been waiting for her. The figure spoke, their voice calm and smooth, like the wind rustling through the trees. "I see you found the first of the trials." Ilara blinked, confused. "The trials?" "Yes," the figure said, stepping closer. "The trials of the forest. The tests that await those who seek the enchanted bridge." The figure's voice softened, almost regretful. "I am afraid you cannot turn back now. The journey has already begun." Ilara's pulse quickened. The trials? She hadn't expected this. The voice had spoken of sacrifice, but she hadn't realized that finding the bridge would come with such challenges. "I'm ready," Ilara said, her voice more confident than she felt. She was determined to uncover the truth of the enchanted bridge, no matter what it took. She had to. For herself. For Rivervale. The figure nodded, as if they had expected no less. "Very well, then. Your first trial is this. Cross the river of reflection." Ilara furrowed her brow, her gaze falling on the map once more. The river was there, marked in a faint blue ink, but the map hadn't said anything about trials or tests. "The river lies ahead," the figure continued, their voice taking on a mysterious, almost cryptic tone. "To cross it, You must confront your own fears, your own truths. Only then will you be worthy of the bridge." Before Elara could speak, the figure turned and gestured toward the dense forest, where the sound of rushing water could now be heard in the distance. The voice softened, fading with the wind. "Go now, and remember, there are no second chances." With that, the figure vanished, melting into the shadows of the trees. Elara stood there, her mind racing, trying to process everything that had just happened. The trials, the river, the voice. Everything was happening so fast, and yet, she couldn't help but feel like this was only the beginning. Taking a deep breath, Elara tucked the map back into her belt and set off toward the sound of the river. The forest was quiet now, as if it were holding its breath for the trials to come. Elara's heart was heavy with uncertainty, but there was a part of her, an adventurous spark, that was eager to see what awaited her. As she moved forward, the question lingered in her mind: what was she willing to sacrifice to cross the river? The answer, she knew, was something she would soon have to face. Chapter 3: The River of Reflection. The forest grew darker as Elara pressed on, the shadows stretching long across the path. The distant sound of rushing water grew louder with each step, and soon the trees parted, revealing the wide expanse of the river. It was not like any river she had seen before. The water was crystal clear, but it moved in a peculiar way. The current flowed backward, as if time itself had decided to reverse its course. The banks were lined with smooth stones, and a faint mist clung to the surface, curling like smoke in the cool air. Elara stood at the edge of the river, staring at the strange, mesmerizing flow. She felt a deep unease settle in her chest. The figure in the forest had spoken of the river of reflection, but she hadn't realized just how eerie it would feel to stand before it. The water shimmered, reflecting not just the trees and sky, but something else. The figure's words echoed in her mind. To cross it, you must confront your own fears, your own truths. Elara took a step closer to the water's edge, her reflection rippling in the stillness. For a moment, she couldn't help but look at herself. The face staring back at her was young, determined, but there was something else, something uncertain in her eyes. She had always been the dreamer, the one who sought adventure, but there was a deep fear lurking inside her, a fear that she wasn't enough, that the world of magic and mystery she had always imagined might not be as welcoming as she had hoped. Her grandmother had always told her she was destined for something great, but what if she wasn't? What if she was just another lost soul chasing a legend, doomed to fail like so many before her? "Are you afraid, Elara?" The voice came from the river itself, soft yet clear, as if it was woven into the very fabric of the water. It was not the voice of the cloaked figure, but something more ancient, more profound. Elara froze, the hairs on the back of her neck standing up. The reflection in the river began to change. It rippled, shifting into images of her past, her childhood in Rivervale, the adventures she'd dreamt of, her moments of triumph and failure. But these images were different. They weren't just memories. They were distorted, exaggerated versions of her life. She saw herself as a child, sitting by the river in Rivervale, staring at the water with longing in her eyes. "I'll go on a great adventure one day," she had told herself. The reflection of the young girl smiled back at her, but it was a smile full of arrogance, as if she were already certain of the greatness she would achieve. The image shifted again, and she saw herself older, standing in the village square, listening to her grandmother's stories about the enchanted bridge. Her grandmother's voice, soft and wise, filled the air. The bridge only reveals itself to those who are worthy. The trials will test your heart. But the reflection of Elara in the water looked back at her with a cold, dismissive expression. I don't need anyone's help. I'm the only one who can find the bridge, it seemed to say. The arrogance, the self-doubt, it was all there in the reflection, staring back at her with an unsettling clarity. A chill ran down her spine as the water shimmered again, and the images shifted once more. This time, Elara saw herself standing at the edge of the river, just as she was now, but with a different expression, fear in her eyes. The fear of failure, the fear that she was not enough, that she would never be worthy of the enchanted bridge, that the bridge would appear only to someone else, someone braver, someone stronger, someone more deserving. Is that your truth, Elara? The voice in the water whispered again, this time closer, more insistent. Do you fear that you are not worthy? Elara took a step back, her breath catching in her throat. Her reflection was right. She feared it more than anything. All her life, she had longed for greatness, for something beyond the ordinary life of Rivervale, but deep down, she had always wondered if she truly had what it took to become a hero. What if the trials were too much? What if she wasn't strong enough to face them? Tears stung her eyes as she realized the truth of her reflection. She had always believed she was destined for something greater, but now, facing the reality of the journey ahead, she couldn't shake the feeling of inadequacy. To cross the river, you must face what lies within, the voice said, its tone gentle but firm. You must face the doubts that bind you. Only then will the way forward open. Elara's knees buckled, and she sank to the ground at the river's edge, her hands trembling as she reached into the water. The cool liquid flowed over her fingers, and for a moment she thought she might drown in the weight of her own fear. But then she felt something shift deep inside her. She closed her eyes, breathing in the cool air and focusing on the stillness of the river. She had to face this. She couldn't let her fear control her any longer. It was time to confront her own truth. With a deep breath, Elara stood up. Her reflection still shimmered in the water, but now she saw something different. A strength, a determination, a spark of courage she hadn't seen before. She had always believed in the stories of the enchanted bridge, in the power of magic and adventure. But now she realized that the real magic was in her. She was worthy of the trials. She was worthy of the journey. I am worthy, she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible over the rush of the river. But the words felt real. They felt true. And as she spoke them, the river seemed to respond, its current slowing and calming. The mist around her began to lift, and the shimmering light of the water faded. For a moment, Elara felt a weight lift from her chest, and the air around her seemed to clear. The voice in the river was silent now, but Elara knew that something had changed. She had passed the first test, not by defeating a creature or solving a riddle, but by confronting the darkness within herself. The river of reflection was not just a test of strength, but of heart, and Ilara had faced it head-on. As she stepped forward, the path across the river revealed itself, a narrow bridge of stones, shimmering with light as if the river itself had formed a way forward. The bridge stretched across the flowing water, leading deeper into the forest. Ilara stepped onto the stones, feeling them solid beneath her feet. The first trial was over, but Ilara knew that many more would follow. She didn't know what awaited her next, but she felt stronger now, ready to face whatever came her way. The enchanted bridge was closer, and so was her destiny.